Even though Star Trek is a science fiction franchise, it does have fancy elements found within it as seen with the godlike entities that are known as the Q. They're basically omniscient and omnipotent. But with that said, even they are scared of the franchise's cybernetic space zombies that are known as the Borg. Then there's the Dominion, who represents such an existential threat that it caused the Federation to compromise a number of their core beliefs, tenets, and values as a society. So the question now becomes, who is worse, an unstoppable military threat or one's ideological enemies? With either enemy, they threaten your way of life. Greetings and welcome back to Checkpoint Gaming, Star Trek Ascendancy. With this episode, we will be going over the variants that are available to that of standard play. With the current game variants, they consist of the Borg, the Gamma Quadrant, and the Dominion War. When playing with the Borg, there are two ways that they can be added into the game. The first way is to discover the Borg through the exploration of the galaxy. The second way is to have the Delta Quadrant connection be present in the beginning of the game. If discovering the Borg, they'd only use the Borg exploration card and have the green Borg symbol on it. But if playing with the Delta Quadrant connection, then use all cards found in the Borg expansion, which includes the Borg exploration card and have the green and red Borg symbols on them. The Delta Quadrant connection will also require the transwarp hub system disk to be placed into the center of the board, being roughly the same distance from every home system, accompanied by it possessing 3 Borg delay tokens. With these Borg delay tokens, they prevent the transwarp hub from rolling to generate a Borg cube on it during the Borg's building phase. But once all of the Borg delay tokens have been removed, the transwarp hub can start rolling to see if it can generate Borg cube. And once placed, the transwarp hub is fixed. With 1 to 2 player games, the transwarp hub should be about 18 inches away from the player's home systems. With 3 or more players, this might not always be feasible. When there are 3 or more players in the game, the side of the Delta Quadrant connection is going to be used. But if playing with 1 or 2 players, then use the Delta Quadrant connection. This will provide an extra challenge for the players, especially when it's a single player game. And with 1 player games, remove any crisis cards that refer to a rival player from the exploration deck. As of the writing of this episode, there are 29 of them. We will add a list of these cards within this episode's description. There are also 2 exploration cards that we want to point out, Therian Probe and a game of Chilla. With Therian Probe, only have the first sentence be implemented. With a game of Chilla, decide if you want to play with this card or not. With the Ally exploration cards, when drawn, it will stay with a single player throughout the remainder of the game. On top of that, we're going to say that if the player passes the diplomacy test the first time, the player will not need to roll it again for the remainder of the game. When it comes to that of the Orion Interceptors and the Orion Trader exploration cards, if either one is drawn during the single player game, then the player will get to randomly draw an advancement from any faction that is not in play. Since there aren't any other players in a single player game, the factional trade agreements will not be used. If playing the Vulcans in a single player game, they remove all the Vulcan agenda cards. When it comes to that of single player game, remove the following advancement from the advancement decks, including the unused factions. With the Andorians, remove the Deafening Field, Andorian Ale, and Subspace Interceptors cards. With the Cardassians, remove the Obsidian Order. With the Federation, remove Bureau of Security and Multicultural Collaboration. With the Ferengi, remove the bigger the smile, the sharper the knife, hear all, trust nothing, and whisper your way to success. With the Klingons, remove Covert Saboteurs. Unless playing as the Romulans, remove Spectral Emitter Drones, Tal Shiar, and Tal Shiar Monitoring Posts. But regardless of how many players there are, when playing with the Borg, set up the exploration deck the same way one would set up the system disks. First, the player will need to shuffle all the non-Borg exploration cards, followed by dealing out a number of non-Borg exploration cards that are equal to twice the number of players. From there, shuffle the Borg exploration cards that are being used into the remaining exploration cards. Once shuffled in, place a small stack of non-Borg cards on top of the deck. After performing this, place the Borg console card and cube card somewhere on the table that is visible to everyone. Once placed, have the shuffled Borg tech and command deck placed near it. When it comes to some Borg exploration cards, they will move the nearest Borg cube toward the system that is being explored. If there are multiple Borg cubes in play, but their location is not connected to the system, move one of the cubes that's physically nearest to the system that is being explored. With most of the Borg system disks, they consist of phenomena, so make sure to separate them from the system disk stack along with all of the other phenomena disks. If playing with the Delta Quadrant connection, then place the transwarp hub into the center of the board. But if playing with the Borg through exploration, then shuffle it into the system disk stack as one would do with a phenomenon. With the nature of the Borg within the game, they are not controlled by a player. This is so that they represent a threat to all those involved. And if at any time the Borg have established 5 spires and are about to place a 6th, then the Borg have defeated the players by them conquering the galaxy. The Borg will also conquer the galaxy if they have assimilated all of the players. In order for the players to achieve victory, they'll need to claim ascendancy, supremacy, or Vulcan agenda victory while holding off the Borg threat. And if there is only one player left who hasn't been assimilated yet, then they will need to achieve victory before they get taken over by the Borg. In a single-player game, the victory condition will be to achieve 5 ascendancy before it gets assimilated by the Borg. And for those who wish to have a more challenging game, move the Transworld Pub closer to their home system at the start of the game. In a 2-player game, the first player to achieve 5 ascendancy will win the game. And if one of the players becomes assimilated by the Borg, then they will use the rules for the assimilated players. It is now their goal to assimilate the other player. With a player's home system, if it gets assimilated by the Borg, they will have been fully absorbed into the Borg collective. This is true even if said player doesn't control their home system at the time of assimilation. As a result of this, the player will have been eliminated from the game with all their ships that remain on the board being removed from play. For each system that they controlled at this time, the control node is to be removed with warp tokens being placed onto the system. The number of warp tokens placed onto the system will be equal to the number of research nodes found on the system in question. This will make the system a level 1, 2, 3, or 4 independent system. These systems can be invaded or subject to hegemony by the remaining players or to be assimilated by the Borg. If the system has a starbase, then leave the starbase in play. When a player has their home system assimilated by the Borg or gets eliminated by their rivals, then they have become one with the Borg. Because of this, they will continue playing by taking over the rest of the Borg turn. And once assimilated, players will remain assimilated for the rest of the game, even if their home system gets taken over by another player. When other players become assimilated or eliminated, they will wait for the next game round in order to take their turn as the Borg. With each assimilated player, each one will receive a different random turn order card. From there, each will take a full Borg turn when play comes back to them. So with multiple assimilated players, the Borg will take multiple turns in a single round. These players are no longer players in the traditional sense. Because of this, when the rules and exploration cards say the player opposite, the player to your right, or pass to your left, they are to be ignored when it comes to that of the assimilated players. When there is only one player who remains unassimilated, exploration cards that have such tech are to be discarded and a replacement card to be drawn. The Borg as a whole will just discard such cards without effect. With ally cards, if only one player is left unassimilated, then the ally card is to remain with said player for the remainder of the game. When the Borg is being used during a game, they, or all players that have been assimilated, will receive a turn order card like any other faction. Since the Borg can never bid on the turn order, they will always receive a random turn order card, which they receive after the connected players have bid on the turn order and selected their cards. When there is no assimilated player, the player possessing the lowest turn order card will draw a card for the Borg and look at it. Once looking at it, said player can choose to keep the Borg turn order secret until it is the Borg's turn. The player who activated the cube will roll their attack dice, and when defending, the assimilated player who possesses the lowest turn order card will roll. But if there are no assimilated players, then the player found to the right of the opponent will roll the dice. With hits that are inflicted by the Borg when there are no assimilated players, then the players whose ships were hit may decide how to go about allocating said hits. But when the Borg is controlled by an assimilated player, then the assimilated player can pick which ship will be hit. But if there are several players who have been assimilated, then the player with the lowest turn order card can choose which ship will be hit. When attacking multiple players, the Borg hits will be allocated between the players one at a time in player turn order until all of the hits have been allocated. Regarding a planetary invasion of a Borg world, if the player rolls fewer hits than there are structures found upon the planet, then the attack will have no effect and none of the nodes will be destroyed. And if there are fewer ships than there are Borg structures, then the player will not be able to reclaim the Borg world. With the assimilated player who possesses the lowest turn order, they will roll the dice for the defending Borg system. If there are no assimilated players, then the player found to the right of the opponent will roll the dice. And since the Borg are classified as a non-playable faction, the Borg's turn or turns during the execution phase are never considered to be a player's turn, even if there are assimilated players. With that said, the Borg will take their turn in turn order when their turn order comes up during the execution stage. The Borg will always receive a turn order card, even if there are no Borg cube currently found in the game. When it comes to the Borg's turn, they will follow the same sequence of actions as a regular player, so they get a build phase followed by the command phase. With the Borg build phase, they don't use tokens to build as a typical player would. Instead, they will place a new Borg assimilation node around the spires in play and consider it a new Borg cube. With the Borg Transworld Hub, if it is in play and it doesn't have a cube on it, then roll to see if it will generate a new cube. When it comes to a Borg system, it is a system that possesses a Borg spire on it and will take an action during the Borg build phase. However, this is dependent upon the state of the spire. During the Borg build phase, first see if the Transworld Hub will generate a new cube. Second, place a new Borg assimilation node around each spire, where each spire has the potential of generating its own new Borg cube. If the Transworld Hub is in play, then remove one delay token from it. But if there are no delay tokens found on it, then roll to see if it creates a new Borg cube. But if it already possesses a Borg cube, then don't roll to see if it adds a new one. If there isn't a Borg cube found upon the Borg transwarp hub, then roll a die, adding the number of Borg generation tokens to the roll. If the resulting number is greater than the number of cubes that are found upon the map, then the transwarp hub will generate a new Borg cube. But if no Borg cube is generated for one reason or another, then place a cube generation token upon the transwarp hub. But once a new Borg cube is generated, then remove all said tokens. When a Borg system less than 3 assimilation nodes, then an additional node is to be built upon it during the Borg's build phase. But when the Borg system possesses 3 assimilation nodes, but no cube is found atop of the spire, then a cube is to be placed atop of it. With Borg systems that have a Borg cube found atop of its spire, then it will launch its cube into orbit, followed by having all of the assimilation nodes removed unless there is a Borg cube already found in orbit within that Borg system. In that case, leave the Borg cube atop of the spire until the next Borg building phase. And if there are already 5 cubes found upon the board, then no new cubes are to be built. During the Borg's command phase, the assimilated players will draw from the command deck in order to determine what each Borg cube will do during the Borg turn. When there are multiple Borg cubes found in play and there are no assimilated players, the players will take turns selecting a cube to activate, which is to occur in player turn order. After a command is used, it gets discarded into the discard pile. When all the command cards have been drawn and the Borg need to draw more command cards, then the discard pile will be reshuffled. When moving Borg cube and there are no assimilated players, it may require some players to disclose their turn order before it's their actual turn within the game. In this case, the activated cube will be selected before its command card is to be drawn. If there are any assimilated players, then each assimilated player will draw a number of command cards on their turn equal to the number of Borg cubes found in play. After drawing these cards, the assimilated player will choose the order in which each Borg cube will activate. Each player will then fully resolve the activation for each cube before they move onto the next cube. And when taking each of the Borg's activations, the assimilated player can choose which of their drawn command cards they want to execute with each cube. After the Borg build phase, activate each cube in play. When activated, each cube will do the following. First, the cube will engage any eligible player ship in space combat. Second, a Borg command card is drawn and have that cube execute the command found upon it. Many of the command cards consist of movements and will indicate both a target and a warp movement. Some cards can even cause a cube to move past or away from a system that has already been developed. Third, begin the simulation process of a developed system if it is possible. With the resolving of each activation, each cube will fully perform before moving onto the next cube. After each cube completes its actions, place a Borg token upon the cube as a means of indicating that the cube has activated. When all the cubes have completed their actions, the Borg's turn will be over. With some Borg command cards, they will cause multiple cubes to be moved. In situations like this, remove all the cubes regardless if they activated or not this turn, followed by completing the action of the cube which drew the card. Only the cube that drew the Borg command card will receive the Borg token as a result of this movement. If the other cubes have yet to activate, they will still get to activate later in the Borg's turn. If the Borg cube draws an Assimilation Expedited card, then it will not move as a result of this card, but it can still move as a result of other Borg command cards. And when there are more than one Borg cube that is in play, then the players will take turns choosing which cube to activate based upon the turn order. But if a Learn Field Disruption card is played, then the Borg's turn will immediately end. With the Borg's command phase, it looks like this. Step 1. If there aren't any targets that the cube can attack, it will explore, moving to Step 6. Step 2. If the cube is able to reach a target, it will move to the closest target and its movement. Step 3. If the target is too far away for the cube to reach in a single movement and the entire path is unblocked, then it will complete its entire warp movement toward the closest target and along the shortest route possible. From there, it will end its movement. Step 4. The cube will explore a new space lane, make a connection, and then move to a target or place a new system at the end of the space lane. From there, it will end its movement. But if all movement alternatives fail, then the cube will cease its movement. When an exploring cube places a new space lane from its current sector, it will do so, rolling and generating a new space lane with the aim of creating a new connection by swinging any systems in the accompanying space lane, including the one they are in, to allow it to move to and reach its closest matching target. When swinging systems in space lanes, it will only swing them enough to make a placement or connection. It cannot swing a system or space lane further than the minimum needed amount. In order to determine how to swing space lanes and systems, it can be useful to test possible placement and attachments. If it's hard to determine which constitutes the minimum amount of swing possible, then it is up to the player who activated the Borg cube to make the final decision. This doesn't necessarily include the target that would be closer at the start of its movement. If a target is reached, then the Borg's movement will end. But if the target is unable to be reached due to a ship or another cube found within the target sector, then the closest adjacent sector will be used instead, assuming that the cube is able to reach it. If it's not able to do so, then the cube will try and place a new system, move to it, and in its movement, draw an exploration card if it's applicable to do so. And finally, Step 5. Reassign the target and start over at Step 1. If the cube was unable to complete its movement in any of the previous steps, then it will be assigned a new target provided that it hasn't already had the player ship as its target. If so, then start the movement process over from Step 1. If the Borg cube already has the nearest player ship as its target, then the nearest Borg cube will then become its nearest target, starting the movement process over with Step 1. If its target was reached, the other Borg cube will then automatically activate under collective efficiency. If the Borg cube in question already has the nearest ship and nearest Borg cube as targets and is located in a sector where exploration will be impossible, then it will be reassigned its original command card target. From there, it will try to move to the nearest system it can reach and where exploration is possible. From there, go to Step 4. In regards to collective linkage and the move collective command cards, they instruct the player to move multiple cubes. This will mean that all of the cubes will move regardless if they have already activated or not this turn. Once that's done, complete the activation of the cube that was activated by the selected card. With that said, Borg cubes are capable of flying past each other as long as they have enough movement and their paths aren't blocked. Moving cubes will also not be able to reach a target sector that already has a Borg cube found within it. Instead, it will reach the closest adjacent sector. For the movement command cards, they will indicate what the target type is as well as what the warp movement is. If the Borg cube has failed each of the aforementioned alternatives, it will end its movement where it is stationary, even if it was activated one or more times during the Borg's turn. Regardless, this will count as an activation of the new cube and will be marked as such unless it already has been marked as activated. If the Borg telemetry node card is used during an assimilated player's turn, then they will have to discard the Borg command card they are trying to execute and draw a new card. The player will then have to choose a new command for the active cube. If the Borg takes an extra turn due to the command resurgent card, then the assimilated player, if there are any, will take turns selecting a cube to activate. When all of the Borg command cards have been drawn, then shuffle the discarded cards in order to create new Borg command deck. When the terms nearest, closest, or shortest appear upon a Borg card or within the movement rules, they generally mean the nearest as determined by warp movement distance, ignoring any blocking ships. If a tie occurs, then use the fewest sectors. If this is still a tie, then the player who activated the cube will select the route from the equidistant sectors. There will be some Borg exploration cards that will nominate the nearest Borg cube to be moved to a system. If there are Borg cubes found upon the play area but no connections to the new system, then the cube is to be placed in the system instead. Otherwise, the nearest connected cube will teleport to the system, regardless of the distance or if there are blocking ships. When the Borg cube activates, it will begin by initiating a space battle with all player ships that are found in that sector or adjacent sectors. And it will engage in these space battles simultaneously, even if there are ships belonging to multiple players. When engaging in combat with multiple players, then all players will have to direct their attacks against the Borg cube. When in combat, the Borg will have a number of special rules that they will have to follow. First, the players will always have first strike against the Borg cube during the first round of combat in space battles and planetary assimilation. This holds true regardless of who initiated the attack. Second, Borg cube will start their space battle with 9 attack dice. When the Borg takes damage, they will lose attack dice. When it's time for a Borg to attack, they will roll all of the remaining attack dice, ignoring the dice that were removed due to damage. Third, when in combat, Borg cubes will not retreat. They will fight until they win or get destroyed. Fourth, when starting each space battle or planetary invasion, the Borg cube will always have a shield modifier of 0. When each round of combat comes to an end, the cube shield modifier will be increased by 1. Place a Borg assimilation node upon the Borg cube card in order to track current shield modifier, maxing out at 4. After they take casualties, if the Borg shields have reached the point where the player's ships can only hit on a 7 or better, then said player will have to retreat. When players retreat from the Borg during a space battle, then they will have to move so that they are no longer found in an adjacent sector to the cube. But if they cannot move to such a sector for any reason when retreating, then they get destroyed. Fifth, whenever a Borg cube takes damage, place one of their attack dice onto the Borg cube card. This is to keep track of how much damage that the cube has taken. Because of this, dice found on the cube card cannot be used during the attack. Sixth, with the Borg's hit roll, it is dependent upon how many spies are found on the board as shown upon the Borg command console. The Borg console also gives the Borg special rules and their weapon level. When there are no spires, they hit upon 5+. When there is 1 spire, they hit upon 4+. When there are 2 spires, they hit upon 3+. When there are 3 spires, they hit upon 2+. And when there are 4 or 5 spires, they hit upon 1+. If there are 700 players, they will allocate hits in the Borg. Otherwise, the player will take the hits that are allocated to them to their own ships. If there are multiple defenders that are facing the Borg, then they will take turns allocating hits in player turn order. This continues until all the hits have been allocated. 7th, since the Borg possess advanced weaponry, the weapons will ignore all shield unless the target player possesses tech or an advancement that will specifically work against the Borg. 8th, whenever a Borg attack rolls is 6, which is represented by the Borg symbol on the Borg faction dice, during space battle or planetary invasion, they will both score a hit against the player as well as regenerate 1 damage, assuming that the player's hit will not destroy the cube. When regenerating damage, each 6 the Borg has rolled during the attack will cause 1 die from the cube card to be added back to their pool of attack dice for the following round. It is worth noting that the Borg cube cannot roll more than 9 attack dice. 9th, when the Borg cube wins a space battle, it does not perform a tactical maneuver. In addition to this, a damage cube that wins a battle will begin the next battle back at full health with 9 attack dice. 10th, when a Borg cube sustains 9 damage and all of its dice have been placed upon the cube card, then the cube is destroyed. From there, all players that participated in the space battle, including those who failed to hit or get destroyed, will draw a Borg tech card. When it comes to the Borg tech cards, they are obtained when a player destroys the Borg cube or reclaims a Borg system and represent a new way to combat the Borg. With many of the Borg tech cards, they possess a research cost and are placed directly into the player's advancement area. But there are some Borg tech cards that have research costs and are placed into the player's project area until they have been completed or are discarded to make room for other advancements. Many of the Borg tech cards will require the player to discard the card in order to use their ability. When discarding the Borg tech card, place the card at the bottom of the Borg tech deck. This card can be exhausted during the Borg turn in order to discard a drawn Borg command card and draw a different command card. After a Borg cube has engaged any of the player ships, a Borg command card is to be drawn for that cube. Although many of the command cards are movement cards, some have other instructions. When it comes to that of the Borg movement cards, they possess a target system and a warp range. When they move, the Borg cube travels at warp, and since they have Borg transwarp technology, they are able to move through phenomena that would otherwise prevent warp movement. When a movement card is drawn, move the Borg cube toward the target system as described upon the movement card. The cube will then move at warp the number of warp tokens that are shown upon the drawn card. There are some movement cards that can cause the cube to move past or away from the orbit of a developed system. If there are 2 or more systems that could be the target of a cube, move the cube toward the one that can be reached through the route that possesses the few sectors, even if that route has more space lanes. If this is a tie, then have the cube move toward the system that is controlled by a player that has the lowest turn order. Unlike player's ship, Borg cubes cannot move through a player's ship. If a cube's movement will take it past the player's ship, then it will come to a halt in the adjacent sector. And if the ship is at a transwarp conduit, the cube will move toward the transwarp conduit and stop. With any given sector, it cannot contain more than 1 cube at any given time. If a cube's movement causes it to end in the same sector of another cube, then it will stop in the sector found just before the one that is occupied by the other cube. When the moving cube's action is complete, place a Borg token on it in order to indicate that it activated. From there, activate the other cube even if it had already activated this turn. When doing this, do not place a Borg token upon the second cube. If it has not activated this turn, then it will activate as normal later within the Borg's turn. With the transwarp hub system disk, it connects to both of the transwarp conduit system disks. Both the players and the Borg can warp from the hub, either of the conduits, and vice versa. Treat them as if they were connected via a space lane. It is worth noting that the conduits are not connected to each other and that attacks are not allowed between the hub and the conduits. Movement is also allowed between the hub and the conduits, even if they contain hostile rival ship, but only for the Borg. If the hub is the shortest available route to the target system, then the Borg will use it. When counting the number of sectors found between systems in order to detect which one is closer, count the transwarp hub as being 1 sector from each transwarp conduit. But they are not adjacent sectors and the player cannot attack from one to the other. Instead, they are required to move to an opponent's transwarp hub or conduit in order to attack from there. When a cube isn't connected to its target by a space lane, but there isn't a target of the type that is listed for, it will move to the nearest system unless already occupying a system. From there, it will place a new space lane that is pointed directly toward the home system of the player who has the lowest turn order as possible. If a floating system can be swung in order to connect a new space lane to an existing system so that the cube can make its way to the target, then do so. But if the player is unable to do so, place a new system at the end of the new space lane. When the Borg places a new system, then they will stop their movement and explore the system and reveal a new exploration card. If they discovered a new civilization, develop the system normally. The Borg will also ignore the Ally, Crisis, and Discovery cards. Place cards that remain in play on the system. When discarding Ally cards, place them at the bottom of the exploration deck. All the cards are placed into the discard pile. If the card is not connected to its target system and it cannot place a new space lane and system for any reason, then the cube will move along a randomly selected space lane to the next system instead. It is worth noting that the Borg are more likely to place a new system when the Transworld Pub begins the game upon the table. When the Borg are done with their command, a Borg cube will try and assimilate any developed system that the cube is occupying, and this counts as a planetary invasion. When they invade, it starts with 9 attack dice, ignoring shields, with the system being assimilated, rolling a die for each of its nodes. Since the Borg aren't interested in capturing nodes, each Borg hit will already destroy the nodes. If the Borg are being controlled by an assimilated player, then the player will decide which nodes will be destroyed. Otherwise, the player who is in control of the system will decide which nodes will be destroyed. For independent systems, then the player who activated the cube will allocate the hits. When attacking, the Borg cube will strike the resource node first, followed by destroying the starbase if present. From there, the control node will be attacked as the next target. If a system possesses a starbase, it will roll an additional die in order to resist assimilation. Since the starbase counts as an additional node on the system, it will have to be destroyed in order for assimilation to be successful. For systems that are assimilated by the Borg and possess the starbase is removed and cannot be rebuilt during the game. Destroying a starbase will also cause a Borg assimilation node to be added for every Borg spire found in play. Since the Borg are not interested in negotiation, Vulcan ambassadors will have no effect upon the Borg assimilation attempt. If the assimilation is successful, then the ambassador will be destroyed. If a Borg cube destroys all of the nodes found within a system, then the Borg spire will be placed upon the system. During future Borg building phases, a Borg assimilation node is to be added to the system. Once 3 Borg assimilation nodes have been constructed, the system will be fully assimilated, causing a new Borg cube to be constructed. With Borg systems, they can be invaded in an attempt to eradicate the Borg presence, with any and all factions being allowed to try and reclaim a Borg system. In order to successfully reclaim a Borg system, the player will have to roll enough hits to result in total annihilation or successful invasion. Regarding spires, assimilation nodes, and cubes found atop a spire, they all count as nodes and structures. It is worth noting that if a cube is found atop of a spire, it does not count as a ship. Unlike combat with a cube, players will not have first strike when they are attacking a Borg system. In addition to this, the Borg are able to shrug off lateral damage, so if a player rolls fewer hits than there are structures found upon the planet, the attack will not have any effect and no nodes are destroyed. When players have fewer ships than there are Borg structures, then the player will not be able to reclaim the Borg system. When a player achieves total annihilation or successfully invades the system, all of the Borg structures are removed from it. The player will also not place a player control node into the system. This is due to the Borg too heavily damaging the system in question while they are there, requiring it to be recolonized by a player. With the player who claimed the system, he'll draw a Borg tech card. Borg worlds are also unable to be the target of hegemony. When it comes to a Borg system, it possesses a shield modifier, with this modifier being equal to the number of Borg assimilation nodes found upon that given system. When in combat, a Borg node is added to the system after each combat round. This will increase the Borg shields and will bring the system that much closer to building a new cube. With a Borg system, it can never have more than 3 assimilation nodes found upon it. With a system that has 3 assimilation nodes on it during the build phase, the system will create a new cube. When playing with the Borg, a player that connects to any Borg cube or Borg system has made first contact, thus allowing them to start raiding for turn order. And when a player's ship comes across a Borg cube, it will block their movement just like a ship that belongs to another player. When a Borg cube enters a hazardous system, they remain unaffected. Because of this, they do not roll to see if they take any damage. With systems that possess a Borg spire, they will not count as a developed system or a home system when it comes to that of determining where to move a Borg cube. And if a spire possesses 3 assimilation nodes and there are already 5 cubes found in play, leave the assimilation nodes in place. Once a Borg cube is destroyed, then it will become available to place it upon the spire during future Borg build phase. When it comes to that of the Borg tech deck, it doesn't count as an advancement deck, despite each card that is drawn being played as an advancement. Advancements that allow the player to draw from a rival's advancement deck, it doesn't include the Borg deck cards, thus preventing the player from drawing from this deck. With advancements that apply to any rival ship or to rival, they also apply to the Borg. With advancements that automatically destroy a rival ship, they will do 1 damage to the cube for each ship that is destroyed. With advancements that cause a rival to roll a die for each of their ship, it will cause the Borg to roll once for a Borg cube. In games that consist of 1 or 2 players, some advancements are not particularly useful. In order to help avoid this, use the focused research advanced rules that allow the players to look through their advancement deck and choose one advancement instead of randomly drawing 2. And as usual, when the Ferengi have a ship in orbit around a Borg system, they will gain production. With the Klingons, they still can retreat from a battle, even against the Borg. But since they always hit on a result of 6, they still have the chance of defeating the Borg. And they get an additional culture token when they defeat a Borg cube. With the Klingon Marauder fleet, will take a sneak production token when it destroys a Borg cube. When a player attacks the Borg on their turn, other players are unable to join them in the attack. If players want to mount a coordinated defense against the Borg, then they will need to get their ship and fleets in place and then wait for the Borg to initiate the attack. With that taken care of, there are some optional rules that people can incorporate into their game that involves the Borg. First, when a Borg cube engages a player's ship, it can do this before and after exhausting a Borg command card. As a result of this, a Borg cube that executes the command aggression card will ignore the Borg's slow and methodical rule. Second, the players could reduce the number of spires the Borg need to win. In this situation, when the Borg have 3 spires on the board and are about to place a 4th, all the players have lost. Third, only allow a fleet that the player created to be used to block the movement of a Borg cube. Because of this, individual ships are not able to block a Borg ship from moving. Fourth, place the Transwar Pub into the system's desk file instead of placing it into the center of the table during setup. But even though the Transwar Pub is in the system deck file, the players will still use the red Borg band and exploration cards. Fifth, deal out a number of non-Borg exploration cards equals to 3 times the number of players instead of twice the number to go atop of the exploration deck. Although players will know that the Borg are out there somewhere, this will give the players more time to explore the galaxy before they run the risk of encountering the Borg. Sixth, when the mystery turn order advanced rule is being used and there are no players that have been simulated, the player who will be going first for that turn will randomly draw a turn order card for the Borg. This player will have the option of keeping the Borg turn order secret until it is the Borg's turn to go. Seventh, when using the Humble Beginnings advanced rule, it can lead to a short game if the Borg are discovered early. To counter this, double the number of non-Borg exploration cards found at the top of the exploration deck, followed by shuffling the Transwar Pub into the bottom half of the system disc stack. Now that we've finished with the Borg, we can now talk about the Gamma Quadrant. When playing with the Gamma Quadrant, the Bajoran-Idrin system and the Gamma Quadrant system disc are to be used in order to allow the players to use the Gamma Quadrant in their game. With the Gamma Quadrant, it can be added into the game if one of the players chooses to use the Dominion as their faction. If playing with the Gamma Quadrant, then the Dominion will have to make contact with all the factions through the Bajoran wormhole, including the Borg. With the systems used in the Gamma Quadrant, they are marked with the Gamma Quadrant symbol on both sides of the disc. They are also to be kept separate from the rest of the system discs, which are only used for the Alpha Quadrant. To set up the game with the incorporation of the Gamma Quadrant, place the wormhole system piece onto the board with Bajor found in the center and Idrin oriented so that it is closest to the Great Link. With this wormhole system, it consists of 2 parts, the Bajor system and the Idrin system, which are linked to the eponymous wormhole. Regarding Bajor, it is a planetary system found within the Alpha Quadrant, while Idrin is a phenomenon found within the Gamma Quadrant. It is worth noting that these 2 systems are not adjacent to each other. Instead, they are connected. Regarding the wormhole system, like the home worlds of each faction, it is fixed with Bajor starting off the game as an independent, warp-capable civilization with 3 warp tokens found on it, a weapons head roll of 5+, and a shield modifier of 3. It also gets 2 culture nodes. Unlike most independent civilizations, Bajor comes with its own starbase in the form of Deep Space Nine. Because of this, when a player takes control of Bajor, they will gain control of the starbase and obtain a command token from it as if they have captured a starbase from another player. Because of the starbase, Bajor's hegemony resistance gets increased by 1, and if the Cardassian expansion is being used or has otherwise been incorporated into the collection of game pieces, remove the Bajor system that came with that expansion from the Alpha Quadrant stack. This is because the Bajor part of the wormhole system replaces it. From there, prepare the Gamma Quadrant system disk alongside but separate from the Alpha Quadrant system disk during setup. This includes separating the Gamma Quadrant Interstellar Phenomenon system disk from the Gamma Quadrant Planetary system disks. When that is done, set aside 2 random Gamma Quadrant Planetary System disks and then shuffle the remainder of the Gamma Quadrant Planetary Systems together with all the Gamma Quadrant phenomena. When that is completed, place the starting Gamma Quadrant Planetary Systems atop of this stack. When it comes to exploring the Gamma Quadrant, it's done the same way as one would explore the Alpha Quadrant, where one would roll and place space lanes as normal. The difference is that players in the Gamma Quadrant can only pull from the Gamma Quadrant system stack. Gamma Quadrant systems can also only connect with other Gamma Quadrant systems. So Gamma Quadrant disks can never connect to an Alpha Quadrant disk and vice versa. It is worth noting that players are not allowed to place space lanes in systems in a way where it would make it impossible for Alpha Quadrant systems to connect with Bajor or Gamma Quadrant systems to connect with Idrin. When it comes to that of resolving the discovery of a planetary system and phenomenon, do so as normal. When drawing exploration cards in the Gamma Quadrant planetary system, do so from the Alpha Quadrant exploration deck. When it comes to that of moving through the wormhole, players are not allowed to do so at warp. Because of this, ships and fleets will have to exit out of warp when at Bajor or Idrin first. The player will then need to exhaust one command in order to move a ship or fleet from one side of the wormhole to the other. When traveling through the wormhole system, players are always allowed to travel between the two systems even if the system that is found on the other side of the wormhole is held by a hostile rival. Because of this, the hostile rival cannot prevent other players from entering the system through the wormhole. Rivals are not able to use ships found in the system to prevent other players from leaving the system. As of the writing of this episode, it is unclear if the Borg is allowed to go through the wormhole found on the Bajor Idrin system. The issue arises due to the wormhole requiring the issuing of commands to go through it. Since the Borg do not have any command available to use, as well as the current rules saying that a ship will have to exit out of warp when in Bajor or Idrin, this implies that they cannot go through the wormhole. It can also be argued that they are an Alpha Quadrant threat since their system disks are designed for the Alpha Quadrant system disk stack, not the Gamma Quadrant system disk stack. However, the Borg possess Borg warp technology, which allows them to move through phenomena that would otherwise prohibit warp movement. And since the wormhole can be seen as a phenomena, albeit a unique one, it can be seen that the Borg can travel through the wormhole without a problem. Until we get official rules to help clarify the situation from Gale Force 9, we'll leave it up to the players on how to proceed with this in their given game. We also provide some of our own thoughts and opinions regarding the matter, which is found later in this episode. If players are playing the game without the Dominion or wish to have the Gamma Quadrant be part of the game, then the following rules are to be used. When setting up the game, don't place the wormhole system onto the board at the start of the game. Instead, when a player draws a phenomenon from the system disk stack, roll a space lane die. On the result of 4, replace the phenomenon with the wormhole system with the space lane connected to Bajor. From there, the players are able to explore the Gamma Quadrant. When placed, the wormhole system isn't fixed. But once another space lane is connected to the wormhole system on either Bajor or Idrin, then it will become fixed. With the Gamma and Delta quadrants taken care of, we can now move on to the Dominion War variant of the game. When playing the Dominion War, it includes the creation of alliances and introduces alliance cards and resistance cards. At the start of the game, divide the factions into 2 rival alliances. Since factions no longer stand and fall on their own, they do what they can to have their alliance claim dominance over the rival alliance. A minimum of 4 players are needed to play the Dominion War, and it is recommended that an even number of players are present in order to play. With that said, an odd number of players are able to play the Dominion War, which will be discussed later in this episode. With the rules for the Dominion War, they use the same standard game rules with the following modifications. When setting up, 2 alliances already exist and are at war with each other. With each alliance, their component factions are already connected with their neighbors. With the alliance selection cards, they're divided into 2 types, red and blue. When forming the alliance selection deck, have it possess the same number of cards as there are players with an equal number of each type. Before the players place their home systems, each player will blindly draw an alliance selection card in order to see which alliance they will belong to. And once the alliances have been determined, all of the allied players should sit together on the same side of the play area. From there, these players start the game with their home system connected to 4 planetary systems that have already been explored and colonized by said faction. In order to establish these connections, each player will roll the space lane die, followed by using the appropriate space lane to connect the planetary system drawn from the system disk stack to their home system. From there, they will place one of the control nodes upon this system. This process will continue until all 4 systems connect to the player's home system. But if the player draws a phenomenon instead of a planetary system, discards the phenomenon and draw again until the player draws a planetary system. After all the players have done this, shuffle the phenomena that were drawn back into the system disk stack. Also, don't build the stack normally with only planetary systems found on top of the pile. This is because that rule has been suspended. After all these systems have been connected, it's time for the player to connect with their alliances. When doing this, each player will have an ally found to the right, will try and connect to them by rolling a space lane die. From there, they will connect the system that is located closest to the ally to the nearest allied system, assuming that they could reach it. If they can't, then they will draw the top system from the system disk stack, which can be either a planet or a phenomenon. This process will continue until the shortest connection route has been created to that given ally. If drawing from the system disk stack, place an exploration card face down upon each planetary system that has been placed in this manner. With a route to an ally that possesses an unexplored system that cannot be navigated around. Players will have to stop by that unexplored system and discover the planetary system or phenomena that's found there. After each ally has been connected, then the remaining players will follow the same procedure in order to connect to a member of the opposing alliance found to the right. At the end of this process, all of the home systems should be connected in a ring. From there, each player will build the 3 research nodes upon their home system, followed by building 9 additional research nodes on the adjacent systems that the player controls. If they are unable to build all of the research nodes onto their systems, then place as many of them as they can upon their respective systems. When that is done, choose one of the unexplored systems found adjacent to the player's systems that they control and reveal it, discarding the exploration card as they do. If it's a phenomenon, then discard it and replace it with a randomly selected planetary system from the system disk stack. Once that is done, place a control node onto the system and place any of the remaining resource nodes onto it. Since all allied players start the game having already made contact with their allies, they are allowed to exchange trade agreements with allies before the game begins. Each player can also only hold 1 trade agreement at a time. Although this rule can use a little more clarification, we are going to say that if there are more than 2 players in an alliance, then all players in said alliance can exchange their trade agreements. But the rule is still in place where a player can only hold 1 trade agreement from a specific faction. We feel that this will allow the players to remain true to the spirit of the rule. We suspect that when the rule was initially written, it was operating off of the minimum number of players with each alliance possessing only 2 members. So we hope that our little editorialization helped clarify the matter. And if a trade agreement would start off the game exhausted, then they are exhausted. If there are any additional requirements for the exchanging of trade agreement, then they will have to be met as well. If one of the selected factions is the Dominion, then the Gamma Quadrant expansion can be put into play. When setting up the game for the Gamma Quadrant, pull the 4 colonized planetary systems for the Dominion from the Gamma Quadrant system disk stack. From there, have the Andorian phenomenon of the wormhole system connected to the system that is located closest to the center of the board. With that done, have the Bajoran system pointing toward the center of the board. But if players want to play with the Gamma Quadrant without the presence of the Dominion, they use the rules discussed earlier about discovering the Gamma Quadrant. When it comes to that of their alliances, all of their connections, as well as those found on the opposing alliance side, are done through Bajor when the Gamma Quadrant is in play. At the start of the Dominion War, regardless of the ascendancy level of any given faction, they all start off the game with all 3 of their fleets and starbases in play. With all of the players found in a given alliance, they are all considered to be allies. What this means is that they are at peace, thus preventing them from initiating space battles against each other, nor allowing them to invade or attempt to engage in cultural hegemony against the system that an ally controls. Players of an alliance can enter into, as well as move through, sectors and systems that contain ships that belong to an ally. Players are also allowed to form fleets at their alliance's starbases. However, they are not allowed to build ships there. Permission also isn't required in order to move 1 ships or fleets through alliance sectors and systems. When initiating a space battle, players are unable to attack allied fleets and ships found in the sector that they are attacking. When initiating a space battle, a player can exhaust an additional command token to have an allied ships and fleet found in or adjacent to the sector that they are attacking in order to join in upon the battle. If the player wins the space battle, only the player who initiated the space battle can make a tactical maneuver in order to move their ships and fleets forward. When it comes to any allied ships or fleets, they remain where they are. With that said, they gain any benefits that their civilization gives them after winning a space battle. For any ships and fleets, they remain under their own player's command and can retreat after any round of combat if the player wishes to do so. They can do this even if an allied player chooses to continue to fight. When a player initiates a planetary invasion, a player can exhaust an additional command token to have any allied ships and fleets to join in upon the invasion. If the invasion is successful, the player who initiated the invasion will take control of the system. This includes them capturing any research or starbases found there. For any ships and fleets, they remain under their own player's command and can retreat after any round of combat if the player wishes to do so. They can do this even if an allied player chooses to continue to fight. As of the writing of this episode, there aren't any official rules that touch upon if the player who initiated the space battle or planetary invasion who exhausted an additional command token to have any allied ships and fleets to join in upon the encounter got destroyed or retreated and the ally decided to continue the fight and won the encounter. With that said, in a space battle, we say that the ally can decide if they want to perform a tactical maneuver or not. In a planetary invasion, we say that the ally gets to place one of their control nodes upon the planet. But we'll leave it up to the players who encounter this to make the final decision. Regarding allied starbases, they will add a die to allied ships and fleets that are fighting in a space battle found in that system, even if the player who controls the system doesn't have any ships found within said system. If there are only ships found in orbit of a system belonging to an ally, then each player found within that alliance will count as occupying that system. With players that are found within the opposing alliance, they count as the player's adversary that are always hostile. With that said, there are some exceptions if the player is conquered. Players also cannot hold a trade agreement that belongs to an adversary. With the initiative phase, players are never allowed to seize the initiative. The turn order for every round will always be random. With the execution stage, it is divided into the build phase and the command phase. The build phase and the command phase are taken in turn order. During the build phase, each player will spend their resources as usual in order to develop their faction. Each player will also draw 2 alliance cards at the start of the build phase. During the command phase, each player will exhaust their command tokens in order to move their ships, move their fleets, explore, engage in space battles, invade planets, and to engage in cultural hegemony. With the recharge phase, and at the end of the game round as normal. With each alliance, they have their own alliance cards deck and consists of 2 types of cards, one use and ongoing. With one use cards, they remain in the player's hand until they have been played, and once they are played, said card gets discarded. With ongoing cards, they are placed in front of the player when the card is played and will remain in effect. At the start of the building phase, each player will draw 2 alliance cards and place them into their hand. If they possess more than 3 alliance cards in their hand or in play at any given time, then the player will have to immediately discard down to 3 cards. In order to play an alliance card from their hand, the player will need to spend 1 culture token, which can be spent at any time. Whenever either alliance deck runs out of cards, then shuffle the discard pile in order to form a new deck. If an adversary takes control of a player's home system through either planetary invasion, cultural hegemony, or colonization, then that given player has been conquered. With the player who conquered another player's home system, they are known as the Conqueror. Although the home system of the conquered player possesses the Conqueror's control node, it will remain the conquered player's home system with the conquered player still controlling it. The Conqueror's control node will just indicate that it has been conquered. Regarding conquered players, they are at peace with the adversary's alliance. Because of this, the conquered player cannot initiate a space battle with their adversaries. They are also unable to invade or try cultural hegemony against a system that is conquered by their adversaries. Regarding the adversaries, they are unable to initiate a space battle with a conquered player. They also cannot invade or attempt cultural hegemony against systems that the conquered player controls. When an adversary initiates space battle, the ships and fleets of the conquered player will not participate. The ships and fleets of a conquered player are also unable to prevent an adversary from invading a system or attempting cultural hegemony, even if their ships and fleets are orbiting said system. The conquered player will also have to discard all of their alliance cards that they possess in their hand and have in play. In addition to this, the conquered player will have to revoke all the trade agreements that they have with their allies. The conquered player also cannot draw alliance cards or make trade agreements while they remain conquered. Instead, said player will immediately draw 3 resistance cards. With the resistance cards, they allow a conquered player to fight back against the conqueror. At the beginning of the building phase, the conquered player will draw 2 resistance cards instead of drawing any alliance cards. If the player possesses more than 3 resistance cards in their hand, then they will have to immediately discard back down to 3. If the resistance deck runs out of cards, then reshuffle the discard pile in order to form a new deck. In order to play a resistance card, the conquered player can only do so in the command phase unless the resistance card states otherwise. Each resistance card will show the number of command tokens that the conquered player will have to exhaust in order to play it. With some resistance cards, they allow the player to use one of their fleets to initiate a space battle against the conqueror. The conquered player can add ships to their fleet as normal, and if this fleet initiates a space battle with other ships and fleets belonging to the conquered player capable of joining in the battle, they have the option of doing so. When a conqueror takes control of the home system of a conquered player, the conquered player will have to immediately give half the resources they currently possess to the conqueror, rounding up when necessary. And if the conquered player possesses any research nodes upon the home system, then the conquered player will have to give away active projects to the conqueror for every research node that they captured. Regarding any resources that the conquered player gains during resource generation, half of it will have to go to the conqueror, rounding up when necessary. Besides taking resources from the conquered player, the conqueror has access to all of the completed advancements of the conquered player as if they were their own. Any reference that is made to the conquered player's faction will become a reference to the conqueror's faction when the conquered player's advancements are used. However, the conqueror will not benefit from any additional war feed, command tokens, or culture that is granted by the conquered player's advancements. With conquered players, they will have to allow their conqueror's ships and fleets to enter any system that its ships or fleets are found in orbit. However, the conquered player doesn't have to allow any of the other adversaries to enter their systems. And even though the player might be conquered, they are still part of the original alliance. Because of this, when their alliance wins, the conquered player will also win. And when the adversary's alliance wins, the conquered player will lose. It is worth noting that the conquered player is still unable to initiate planetary invasion or attempt cultural hegemony. In regards to the home system of the conquered player, if a member of their alliance occupies it, then the conquered player will be immediately liberated. Once liberated, they'll place the control node of the conqueror with one of their own. The ally who will liberate the system won't place their control node onto the system. And once liberated, the player will discard all the resistance cards that they possess. When the control nodes are replaced, and there are any resource nodes found upon their liberated home system, the liberated player will capture these nodes, requiring the conqueror to give them one of their active projects for each node that is captured, as if the liberated player has successfully invaded the system. If a conqueror ends their command phase with less than 4 ships in orbit of a conquered home system, then it allows the conquered player to rebel. When the conquered home system rebels, the conquered player will roll a die for each of the conqueror's ship that is found in orbit. On the result of 4 or higher, a ship will be destroyed. And if there are no adversary ships found in orbit of the rebellion home system, then the system has liberated themselves. With all that said, we feel like a loophole exists here that the rebellion home system can roll an indefinite amount of times until it has eliminated all of the conqueror's ships. So we feel like if there are 3 ships or less that is found upon the conquered home system, then the rule basically says that the home system has freed itself. We feel like there should be a limit on how many times that a conquered player will be able to roll in order to get rid of the conqueror's ships. Maybe something like the number of times is equal to that of the initial number of ships that belongs to the conqueror found on the home system. It could also be applied that it is a one-time attempt per round for the home system to free itself. But either way, we feel like the rules should clarify things on that front. In a situation where a conqueror has become conquered and returned by a member of the conquered player's alliance, the conquered player will remain conquered. As a result of this, the conquered player will still have to free themselves through rebellion. When the player hasn't been conquered, they can declare neutrality. If to declare neutrality, the adversary alliance will have to choose one of their members to be the conqueror of the neutral player's home system, thus having them place their control node into the neutral player's system. The neutral player is now classified as conquered, requiring the player to discard all of their alliance cards. After performing this, they will draw rebellion cards normal for the conquered faction. The conqueror then immediately move any ships or fleet from one of their systems that they control into the conquered home system for free. If an ally colonizes a home system of a conquered player after it has been raised, the conquered player will immediately take control of the system. This allows the player to replace the allied control node with their own. Due to the nature of the Dominion War variation, players are unable to be eliminated from the game. Even when they don't control any system down on the board, they will still have their turn, thus allowing them to play resistance cards and allowing them to wait for their allies to liberate them. In order to win the Dominion War, there are 2 ways for the players to achieve this. First is to achieve the supremacy victory. This is done when the player's alliance has conquered all the homeworlds of the adversaries. We're assuming that this rule is operating off of a 4-player game with 2 players for each alliance. Second, players can win when their alliance has conquered at least half of their adversaries' home systems, accompanied by one of the alliance members meeting the conditions for an Ascendancy victory, a Vulcan agenda victory, or an alternative mean of winning the game. When there is an odd number of players, add an extra card to the alliance selection deck in order to ensure that there is an equal number of red and blue cards. After drawing these cards, one alliance will have one more player than the other alliance. With a smaller alliance, they build 3 nodes on their home system and 9 initial nodes onto adjacent systems. From there, add up the number of nodes that the alliance has built. For the larger alliance, split the same number of nodes evenly between the players. After dividing it up, they will build 3 nodes onto their home system, followed by building nodes onto the adjacent systems. With a smaller alliance, each player will start the game with an additional command token. This will grant each player 6 command tokens, except for the Cardassians, who will be gained 7. The players found in the smaller alliance will also get to hold an additional alliance card, giving them 4 cards in their hand and in play. With winning the game, the smaller alliance can achieve this through the supremacy victory if their alliance conquers as many of their adversaries' home systems as there are players in their own alliance. They can also achieve victory when their alliance has conquered at least half of the adversary's home systems and there are players in their own alliance and a member of their alliance achieves the conditions for the Ascendancy victory, a Vulcan agenda victory, or an alternative way of achieving victory. Due to the nature of the Dominion War variant, it has changed the number of rules for the game itself. Because of this, there is an increased chance of the rules found on the card conflicting with the rules of the core game. If this happens, then have the rules found upon the card take precedence. If any further conflicts arise, then the rules for the Dominion War will take precedence over the core game. With the wormhole system, Breacher has some specified weapon head roll, shield modifiers, and hegemony resistance numbers. This also extends to some of the exploration cards. When initially encountering these situations, use their listed ratings rather than the standard civilization tech levels for the system. Once the player has taken control of the system, the listed tech levels will no longer apply, thus no longer having any further effect. Before ending this episode, we would like to touch upon the situation where the players will like to play with both the Borg and the Gamma Quadrant in the same game. In order to achieve this, they will need to figure out how to implement the transfer pub system disk and the wormhole system onto the board, since the rules both say to place the respective item into the center of the play area. Maybe the players could offset the 2 systems and have them roughly centered in one half of the play area. Another option is, instead of placing the transfer pub system disk onto the table, use the Delta Quadrant probe as a means of dealing with the situation. Another option that can be used was pulled from a thread that we started upon BoardGameGeek.com, where one of the comments recommended using a 2-along space lane to connect the transfer pub system disk to the wormhole system. This comment was left by Casey Randall 15 and recommends the transfer pub system disk be connected directly to Idrin. Casey Randall 15 also recommended that the Borg can go through the wormhole from Major, but will have to stop at Idrin. Since we liked this suggestion, we decided to include it here. Accompanying this, since the Borg will destroy any starbase that have been constructed as a system, and since the wormhole system has Deep Space Nine associated with Bajor as part of the system, we got the thinking about how to deal with Deep Space Nine, and the Borg took over this version of Bajor. With that said, we figured that if the Borg took over this version of Bajor, the players would place a token upon Deep Space Nine as a means of indicating that it has been destroyed. Another option is to place a sticky note onto it or scrap of paper in order to cover it. This is something to indicate that Deep Space Nine is no more. At the moment, we'll leave this up to the players to decide on how to go about implementing both the Gamma and Delta Quadrants into their game. Once official rules have been released to deal with this, we'll return to the matter and update you regarding it. In the meantime, we would like to hear from you, the audience, on how you go about dealing with the Borg and the Gamma Quadrant within the same game. And with that said, this will bookend the main series pertaining to how to go about playing the game of Star Trek Ascendancy. We hope that you found this to be helpful and allowed you to better understand how to go about playing the game. As time progresses and any official updates or future releases get put out for the community, we will return to these episodes and update them accordingly to better reflect the changes that have been made to the game. With the nature of Checkpoint Gaming, we want to present the most up-to-date version of the game as possible to those who wish to play. So with that said, we hope you enjoyed our series pertaining to how to go about playing Star Trek Ascendancy. If you liked this episode, feel free to give it a like, and if you want to stay up to date on any future episodes we upload, go ahead and subscribe. You can also support us on Patreon for as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/checkpointgaming. We look forward to seeing you in the next game series, and as always, happy gaming.